Hi, welcome to another episode of ServiceNow TechBytes, the podcast that helps you use the product better and more efficiently. Today, we're going to be talking about the Quarterly Patching Program, also known as the QPP, and we'll cover the differences between an upgrade, patch, and hotfix, how release notes can help with patching, testing on your sub-production instances, whether you can choose only part of a patch, pinning, patching to a newer version than your target, and how to use the upgrade monitor. Today, we have Sarah Holberg. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how's it going?
Sarah is a director in our program management group and has been with ServiceNow about 2 years now.
Just a little over 2 years.
Just a little over 2 years, and has a team of about 10 people now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And Sarah has been with the QPP program since it was designed and implemented a little over a year ago. And so we are going to pick her brain today to ask for tips and tricks and best practices that customers can use around the quarterly patching program. So first off, can you give us an idea of what the quarterly patching program is and why ServiceNow implemented it?
Sure. So the quarterly patching program is to ensure the optimization, availability, and performance and security of customer instances. So we do that by providing quarterly patch targets for each of our supported releases each quarter. We do that 2 weeks prior to the quarter, let customers know that we have some patch targets for them to go to. And then we have, along with that announcement, we have dates with which they will patch, or ServiceNow will patch their instances in the event that they don't patch them prior to the dates that we provide. So ServiceNow actually patches sub-prod instances prior to production instances by 2 weeks to allow customers to test and ensure that their functionality is still working with the latest patch and the fixes that they get. And we do all this to make sure that customer instances, as well as the cloud and infrastructure, are secure for customers and their businesses.
There's a lot of terminology around the QPP program. So can you tell us what the difference is between an upgrade and a patch and a hot fix, so people understand the differences between the three?
Sure. An upgrade is actually moving an instance from one release family to another. So, for example, if you are on Fuji and you decide to move to Helsinki, that's considered an upgrade. That is a completely new release. A patch is actually going up target within a family. So, for example, if you're on Helsinki Patch 1 and our target is Helsinki Patch 2, you are going to be patched up target within that family. And then a hotfix is actually generally it's a fix on top of a patch. So if you're on Helsinki Patch 2, you would go to Helsinki Patch 2 hotfix 3. So a hotfix is generally just a small grouping of 1 to 2 items 1 to 2 problems, I should say, that you would get when taking a hotfix.
So upgrade is the largest jump you can make.
Correct.
Then a patch, then a hot fix.
Mm-hmm.
An upgrade will have the largest payload.
Yeah, it'll have any new features, any new functionality that will come in a new release and or upgrade, versus a patch which will not often contain any kind of new functionality. It will just be fixes for the product that you're already in.
And you mentioned an important piece of this, and that is the communication. So we tell customers in advance when their patch is scheduled. It isn't a surprise.
No, actually, the way that we do it is we ensure when we break out the patching program for the quarter, we have dates for every single customer, and they are consistent quarter to quarter. So let's say Sarah's corporation, I always know that the third week of the quarter, all of my sub-production instances get patched, and then 2 weeks after, which would be the 5th week of the quarter, my production instances get patched. And that's the same quarter to quarter. I know that every quarter, it's the 3rd week for my non-prod and the 5th week for my prod.
So that stays consistent, and even every quarter, we still send them an email so they know it's coming.
Correct, yeah.
Great. I want to talk about a few best practices. I know there are a lot of things that customers can do to help themselves set themselves up for success with this program. Do you have some best practices that you can share with customers?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is, planning for those dates that we provide for you. We have quite an extensive library of documentation on how you can upgrade and patch your instances. So if you go into the release notes, say for Helsinki, you can actually see right there in on the product documentation site, there's a link to upgrading to Helsinki and or patching, and it walks you through, and it has a checklist of all the things that you should really ensure that you're doing prior to an upgrade or a patch. And we have links out to other areas of the product that you might want to know about, like any kind of known issues from where you are to where you're going, those types of things. So that's all contained in the product documentation site underneath release notes. And we recommend that everyone go and look at that. The other thing I would say is to do planning, right? If you know that every quarter we're going to upgrade your sub-production instances on a particular date, start building your plans for business around those things, or working with us to ensure that we actually have a good cadence for you for that quarter. The other thing I would say is know your versions, right? So we patch supported versions, and we give you advance warning, generally 6 months in advance, that a release is going to go out of support. So I would say the one thing that you can do to help yourself is map out your year, and if you're really close to if you're on a release that's going to be out of support, start making those plans now. Like, well, maybe I should put some of my sub-production instances on a newer version, start testing that while I'm patching with the quarterly, patching program. And therefore, when you do kind of run out of quote unquote runway for patches within the family that you're in, you have already started testing that new release, and you can kind of go to that, go or upgrade into a new release with some more confidence, some more testing.
And the testing is critical. You mentioned that the pattern is that sub-production instances are upgraded or patched a few weeks at least before the production instance. So that's the time to do the testing, especially with any customizations that the customer has made, right? So test on that subprod. And there is time for that.
Yeah, and I'll say that just because ServiceNow has put forth a date with which we're going to patch your instances doesn't mean that you shouldn't go ahead, if you have the cycles, to patch your sub-production instances earlier if you feel like you need more testing time to have confidence before moving your production instance. The reason why we notify customers 2 weeks prior to the quarter is that it gives them longer time to say, oh, hey, I should probably take I'm not as confident in my patching this quarter, so I'm going to take an extra few weeks and do my sub-production instances, say 4 weeks before I'm going to do my production instances.
So even though we are sending a notification with the dates, the customer can always choose to take it earlier.
Absolutely.
They can always choose to take the sub-production patch or the production patch earlier. Are they also able to go to a higher version than what we recommend?
Yes. Customers are the only requirement that we have as customers go to our patch targets for that quarter, because we know that they contain the fixes that really need to be out there from a security and availability perspective. But customers are more than welcome to go to higher patches and or higher release targets.
You touched on something else as well, and that is something that's been a question for all ServiceNow customers for a very, very long time, and that is, what is in this patch? What is in this hot fix? What has changed? And so where can customers get the information about what exactly is in there, or as close as we can tell them to what is in the patch and hotfix, so that they can adjust based on their customizations and their instance?
Well, I mean, I would go back to the release notes on the product documentation site. That's where we're putting in a majority, well, not a majority, but everything that actually changes from patch to patch. The information in the release notes actually has gotten a lot more detailed based on the feedback we've gotten from customers. We actually break it out into different sections like areas of importance, security areas, those types of things, and we kind of list out the things there, the problems that we've fixed within the patch. The other thing I would say is that you probably, if you're skipping multiple patches, you want to review the release notes for all of the patches in between where you're at and where you're going, because that'll give you a full view of everything, of the quote unquote payload that you're going to be taking on when you move.
And those release notes are very detailed. I mean, there are the problem numbers. The
Yep.
ServiceNow PRB numbers are listed there, along with steps to reproduce,
Mm-hmm.
I believe, so that customers can test if they even have that problem.
Mm-hmm.
So those release notes are key to the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all on the product documentation site. It's docs.servicenow.com. Couple other questions that I know come up from customers around the QPP. Sarah, is it possible for a customer to take part of a patch?
Well, unfortunately, no. Our patches and hotfixes are cumulative, which means we can't provide incremental deltas for the security fixes or the availability fixes that a customer is looking for. This is an industry standard for SaaS companies like ours. Providing incremental deltas would introduce additional testing challenges and would not contribute to improved test coverage. Instance recovery would be complicated due to manual work required to restore an application node in the event of a hardware failure. These and kind of some other complications affect long-term supportability because ServiceNow would have to develop and apply incremental deltas to each version, patch, and hotfix in our cloud if we, allowed customers to just pick and choose, and it's just not something that we can do.
Well, thank you for explaining that. I know it is a question that comes up around the QPP. And I think another question that comes up as well for customers is, how does the QPP manage it if the customer has their instance pinned?
So pinning is a term that was used, many years ago now, and it used to be part of the old program that we had where customers could opt in to upgrade their instances from one release to another. Patching actually is not upgrading from one release to another. It's patching within a release family. So pinning, again, it only applies if you are upgrading from one family to the next, and that would only be within supported releases. So pinning doesn't apply at all to the patching program because we are not actually moving you from one release to another. If you're in a supported version, you're just really going up family. And then as part of the patching program, we do discuss that, you need to be on a supported version, and a supported version is generally N-2. Now we won't, if you're on a supported release and part of the patching program, we'll never move you to another release unless you're on an unsupported version. And then, then you get into other areas, but it's not really associated with the patching program itself.
Sarah, how about the situation where the target version is lower than the current available version?
Sure. So you're probably most quarters going to see that the latest available version for a family is not what our target is. So what we do is we select a target in advance of the quarter, and we go through and do rigorous testing on that patch since we're going to be rolling it out to such a large audience. Or a large volume of instances. And so we'll select what is the most current at the time that we need to begin testing. And then, by the time we roll it out for the quarter, we could have one or two more patches available for customers to go to.
Okay. I want to ask you a couple questions about how does a customer know when their patch is done? So once the customer they've received their notification and the upgrade is scheduled and then it begins to take place, what can the customer do to monitor, watch the upgrade, make sure it goes through successfully, and if necessary, work with ServiceNow to mitigate any issues with the upgrade?
So the customer can use the upgraded monitor to monitor the upgrade of the instance and validate that the upgrade has completed. Once the upgrade has completed, they can review the process of the skipped records list within that upgrade monitor, and as they're processing and going through that list, they'll resolve conflicts for individual records and make any additional customizations that they need, and then these changes go into the latest version, which goes into the current update set. So if they have issues, like say after it's completed, they've gone through, they've looked at all of these things, if they're having any kind of impact, that's when they would create an incident for our support teams to go in and assist them.
And generally, a patch is not a huge amount of changes, right? So a patch generally does not affect performance of the instance, or are those upgrades scheduled for non-business hours or at night, or how does that get managed?
Yeah, so we generally, for each of the regions, we patch in the overnight hours for the regions to minimize impacts on day-to-day operations for businesses. So patches generally are much, much smaller payloads than doing a new release, going from one release to another. So you will have, a payload of however many PRBs are from one patch to the next. The way that we patch is we, by region, do it overnight for each of those regions to minimize business impact to customers. Should they have issues after upgrading, they can engage our support teams for those regions.
I want to ask one more question about, is there anything else that you want to tell customers about the QPP? A question that comes up a lot, or an issue that comes up a lot. Is there anything else you would like to tell people about the program and how it works, and how to be successful with this program and make it part of their daily work?
Yeah, I mean, I think being successful in this program is really understanding, what releases you're on right now, where all of your instances are sitting, and making that plan and building it into your business continuity plans of, I know, each quarter I'm patching, and I know that, in 3 quarters I'm going to be on a version that's unsupported. And so I'm already starting to plan to get to a supported version, and really being, planful on how to keep yourself current and secure as the year goes on, right? Tips and tricks, I would say, I would say the documentation really that we have out there on the product documentation site is very thorough now. It takes you through all the phases on how to take a patch or an upgrade, and how to evaluate your testing and some of those types of things. So one of the things a lot of customers ask us or engage us with are, maybe the date for a particular instance patch isn't going to work for them. We actually do allow for customers to move their patching date 7 days forward or 7 days after the date that we provide them. And then we have other ways with which we can assist if that's outside the realm of what they can do for that particular week.
And to make that change, do they file an incident, or is that in a change?
No, we want the customers to use the COM records that they'll find on their upgrade dashboard. Any kind of communication that customers have with regards to patching or upgrading, we want them to be leveraging that COM record that sits on the upgrade dashboard rather than opening an incident. We have a fully staffed team that's monitoring those upgrade comms that can quickly and easily get to answer questions for customers. The only caveat to that is after an upgrade is done, if there are issues that are impacting the instance, we definitely want them to open an incident.
Good to know. During our conversation, you've mentioned a lot of different resources that are out there. So there is a lot of documentation out at docs.servicenow.com. I think there's also a video out as well.
There is. We have a video out on our YouTube channel that explains the quarterly patching program. It goes through everything from notification to planning to, the patch itself, and then, quarter over quarter, all of the things that you should be considering and thinking about.
That's a good visual
representation
of how the program works. I know on the ServiceNow community as well, there is a sub-community devoted to the patching process, and I think that's a pretty active group.
It is, yeah. We have that staff with 5 or 6 different folks who are constantly monitoring it to answer questions. So if you don't ask a question in your comm record because it's something easy, I mean, I would definitely start with the community first prior to go into your comm record to ask a question, because a lot of the things that we have customers engage us on are things that are definitely answered in the community or the FAQ that we have sitting off that community.
Yeah, and that's the last resource, is the High Knowledge Base has a very long customer FAQ article that gets updated frequently with questions. So we've got the product documentation, the High Knowledge Base, the ServiceNow community, and the ServiceNow YouTube channel with a video out there for all your upgrade quarterly patching program questions and needs. Well, Sarah, thank you very much for being here with us today. The quarterly patching program is super important. I know there's a lot of people that put a lot of work into it. So thank you for coming and explaining it to us today. And if you make changes in the future, we would love to have you back and you can tell us more about it.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne.